Perfection isn't making you better. It's slowly destroying you. You're allowed to be flawed. You're allowed to make mistakes. You're allowed to not have it all together. But nobody told you that, did they? They told you to be perfect, to get it right, to never slip up, to be strong, capable, flawless. And now you're exhausted. Because perfection isn't a goal you're reaching, it's a performance you're maintaining. And that performance is killing you. This channel is for the man who stayed strong when no one noticed, the man who carried responsibility quietly and slowly disappeared. Here, strength is questioned, silence is exposed, and the cost of being the strong one is finally spoken out loud. Let me show you why perfection is a trap, what it's actually costing you, and what happens when you finally give yourself permission to be human. You weren't born chasing perfection. You learned it. You learned it the first time you made a mistake and saw disappointment. You learned it the first time you failed and felt shame. You learned it the first time you weren't enough and it hurt. So you adapted. You became careful. You started performing flawlessness. You built a version of yourself that never messes up, never shows weakness, never lets anyone down. And people praised you for it. Reliable, responsible, the one who always gets it right. And that praise felt like safety, like as long as you stayed perfect, you'd be valued. But here's what that perfection actually is. It's not excellence, it's not high standards. It's fear dressed up as discipline. You're not pursuing perfection because you want to be great. You're pursuing it because you're terrified of being seen as flawed. Because somewhere deep down, you believe that if people see your imperfections, they'll stop loving you. So you hide them. You perform perfection. You edit yourself constantly. You monitor every word, every action, every decision to make sure nothing reveals that you're human. And it's exhausting.
Because being human means being flawed, and you're trying to be something humans can't be. Here's what perfection actually costs you. First, it costs you authenticity, because perfection requires editing, and editing requires hiding parts of yourself. The messy parts, the uncertain parts, the struggling parts. So people don't actually know you. They know the curated version, the one that never makes mistakes, never shows doubt, never admits weakness. And that version might be impressive, but it's not real. And you know it's not real. So even when people praise you, even when they admire you, even when they say they love you, you don't believe them. Because they don't love you, they love the performance, and you know the difference. Second, it costs you connection, because real intimacy happens in vulnerability, not perfection. When you share your struggles and someone stays, when you show your flaws and someone accepts them, when you're messy and human and someone loves you anyway. But you can't have that if you're performing perfection, because perfection doesn't allow vulnerability, perfection doesn't allow mess, perfection doesn't allow the very things that create real connection. So you end up surrounded by people who admire you but don't actually know you. And that's the loneliest kind of crowded room. Third, it costs you growth, because growth requires failure. You can't learn without making mistakes. You can't improve without being bad at something first. You can't develop without trying things you're not good at yet. But perfection doesn't allow failure. Perfection says you need to get it right the first time, every time. So you don't try new things, you don't take risks, you don't push yourself into discomfort. You stay in the narrow lane where you know you can be perfect, and you call that discipline. But it's not discipline, it's self-limitation. You're not being excellent, you're just being safe. Fourth, it costs you peace.
Because perfection is never satisfied. There's always something that could be better, something that wasn't quite right, something you could have done differently. So you're constantly monitoring yourself, constantly checking, constantly adjusting, constantly performing. And that constant vigilance is exhausting. You can't rest because rest might mean letting your guard down. You can't relax because relaxing might mean making a mistake. You can't just be because being might reveal that you're not perfect. Here's the truth nobody wants to admit. The people who love you don't love you because you're perfect. They love you despite your imperfections, or maybe because of them. Your flaws make you human. Your mistakes make you relatable. Your struggles make you real. And real is what people actually connect with. The perfection you're performing, it might earn admiration, but it won't earn love. Because love isn't for performances, it's for people. And people are flawed. You're not just allowed to be flawed, You are flawed. That's not something to hide. That's just what being human is. But you've spent so long hiding your flaws that you've started to believe that performance is who you are. You've forgotten that underneath the perfection, there's a person. And that person is messy, uncertain, imperfect. And that's okay. Here's what you're actually afraid of. You're afraid that if you show your flaws, people will leave. That if you make mistakes, people will stop respecting you. That if you're imperfect, you'll be rejected. But that fear is based on a lie. The lie that your worth is conditional on your performance. The lie that you're only valuable when you're flawless. The lie that being human is something to apologize for. Most of the people in your life don't need you to be perfect. They need you to be real. They need you to be honest about your struggles so they feel less alone in theirs. They need you to make mistakes so they know it's okay when they do.
Your perfection doesn't make them feel safe. It makes them feel inadequate. Because if you never mess up, they feel like they're failing every time they do. Here's what being flawed actually allows. First, it allows authenticity. When you stop editing yourself to appear perfect, you can show up as you actually are. And that version, the real one, that's the version worth knowing. Second, it allows real connection. When you share your imperfections and someone accepts them, you know the connection is real. They're not loving a performance, they're loving you. Third, it allows growth. When you give yourself permission to be bad at something, you can try new things. When you accept that failure is part of learning, you can take risks. When you stop requiring perfection, you can actually improve. Fourth, it allows peace. When you stop constantly monitoring yourself for flaws, you can relax. When you accept that you're going to make mistakes, the pressure decreases. When you give yourself permission to be human, you can finally breathe. Stop being perfect. You were never supposed to be. You're supposed to be human, and humans are flawed. Your mistakes don't make you less valuable. Your imperfections don't make you unworthy. Your struggles don't make you weak. They make you real. And real is what people actually need from you. The hero's journey isn't about becoming perfect, it's about becoming whole. And whole includes the flawed parts, the messy parts, the parts you've been hiding. Most men spend their entire lives performing perfection while suffocating under the weight of that performance. And they die without ever letting anyone see who they actually were. But you don't have to do that. You can stop performing. You can show your flaws. You can make mistakes. You can be imperfect. And when you do, something extraordinary happens. The people who are only there for the performance leave. And the people who actually love you stay.
And those people, the ones who stay when you're flawed and messy and human, those are your people. Those are the connections worth having. You're allowed to be flawed. You're allowed to make mistakes. You're allowed to be imperfect. That's not failure. That's freedom. And freedom is the only place real living can happen. Stop being perfect. Start being real. The difference will save your life. If this gave you permission to stop performing perfection and just be